Hello, welcome to the Disastrous podcast. I'm your host, Isaias, Jurado, and this is our very first episode of this podcast. I'm extremely excited to share stories that I have in store for all of you listeners out there. Keep in mind that the incidents that I will cover is not for the sole purpose of entertainment, but for educational purposes to prevent such incidents happening ever again in the future. Now then, we will now begin with our first incident coverage of this podcast. And I try to pick an incident that doesn't get that much coverage, or is not known. This incident happened on February the 20th, 2003 in Warwick, Rhode Island, United States, and that is the Station Nightclub fire incident. This is considered as the worst nightclub tragedies in US history and remains as America's deadliest rock concert. This incident had killed 100 people and around 230 injuries. Now you might be thinking, how did this happen? Well, I have the answer for it, and wow, this was preventable for it to happen. Now, it all started just seconds into the band's opening song. The band was called Great White, and they were singing their Billboard mainstream rock hit, Desert Moon, when pyrotechnics set off by the tour manager Daniel Bachel ignited a flammable, soundproofing foam in the walls and ceilings surrounding the stage. The combustible materials began to burn that within 2 minutes, intense black smoke engulfed the club. There were four exits that the people were able to get out of the place, but most people went to the front door, through which they had entered. The crowd rushed in a narrow hallway leading to the exit that quickly obstructed the exit completely and resulted in numerous deaths and injuries among the patrons and staff. Oh, and you may expect that they have fire sprinklers installed, but boy, you are wrong. The club did not have sprinklers installed at all. If they did have sprinklers, the people would have more time to escape the building, which there could have been fewer casualties, or better yet, none. The station was legally required to have them, but for some reason they didn't install them. It took it took around 5 minutes for the entire building to be engulfed with flames. According to the attendants, there were around 462 people inside the building, even though the club's official license capacity was 404. As the result, 100 died, and around half of the survivors were injured from burns, smoke inhalation, thermal trauma, or getting crushed by the crowd. Among the deceased, a member of the band, Ty Longley, who was the lead guitarist and the show's MC, WHYJ DJ Mike, the Dr. Gonzalez, both perished from the fire. It was alleged that Longley did in fact escape the building. However, reports say that he went back in to rescue his guitar. If that was true, he should have not gone back and lived for another day. Furthermore, many survivors stated that a security guard uh, stopped people trying to escape from the stage exit, stating that the door was for the band only, which is hilarious because there's a fire going on. The aftermath of the incident went through further investigation. Attorneys said that the club owners said that they did not give permission to the band to use pyrotechnics. However, the band members claimed that they did have the permission to use them. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, or NIST for short, did the investigation and used computer simulations with fire dynamics simulator and full-size scale of the stage area and dance floor where the fire took place. It was then concluded that with the fire sprinkler, it would have contained the fire long enough for the people to escape. However, many believe that the station was exempt from putting sprinklers because of the building's age, which was built in 1946. Even the fire inspectors did not notice that the building had no sprinklers installed in. 9 months after the incident, the owners of the nightclub and Daniel Bachel, the band's tour manager, were each charged with 200 counts of involuntary manslaughter. The owners were found not guilty, and Bachel, on the other hand, was found guilty of 100 counts of misdemeanor manslaughter. Bachel served 4 years in prison under a plea agreement and 3 years of probation. He was released from prison on March 19, 2008, and his parole and probation expired in March 2011. As for the nightclub memorial, is still there for the public, and memorial services are held each February the 20th. As for the Great White Band, they have split into two groups, one led by Russell and the other by Condell, neither of them having performed in any of the six New England states for over a decade. Then, Russell's group made their first appearance at a festival in Mechanic Falls, Maine in August 2015. Their latest appearance happened in 2020 in an outdoor show in Dickinson, North Dakota. There also had been many civil settlements for this incident, one including the Jack Russell Tour Group that offered $1 million to the survivors and victims' relatives, the maximum allowed under the band's insurance plan. Since the tragedy, the National Fire Protection Association issued the 10th Interim Amendments in the Life Safety Code. In July 2003, the TIAs also require automatic fire sprinklers in all existing nightclubs and similar locations that hold more than 100 occupants. It also requires adding a crowd manager personnel, among other things, to prevent danger. Lastly, fire chiefs and inspectors require trained crowd managers to comply with the International Fire Code. Alright, with that over with, I have some thoughts about this. Alongside with the Station Nightclub fire incident, the United States back then had some serious issues with nightclub fires that also resulted having a lot of deaths. As the station's nightclub is considered the fourth deadliest nightclub fires, the previous years were much worse than this incident. For example, the deadliest one is the 1942 Coconut Grove nightclub. This incident had way more deaths than the Station Nightclub, which had around 492 people dying and 130 injured. And of course, it did not have any fire sprinklers to hold the fire for some time for the people to evacuate. Similarly, the fire started because of a flammable palm tree was exposed to the fire, and thus the incident happened. Just like the Station Nightclub, where a soundproofing foam that was flammable and fire got into it and began to spread. This reason is why most of the time we have incidents like this, because there are flammable materials around the place in which the people are at risk of danger when fire is accessible, like cigarettes or fireworks. Therefore, all public spaces like schools, stores, clubs, restaurants, etc. have fire sprinklers installed to keep the fire at bay and have the people a chance to escape in case the sprinklers does not put out the fire entirely. To summarize, what do we learn from this? Well, in case of a fire, always have fire sprinklers in public spaces no matter what. Even though you may think that the place will never catch fire, fire sprinklers are still necessary for the safety of everyone around you when you go in public. The Station Nightclub was a disaster that could have been prevented and never should have happened. Thankfully, the number of incidents involving with fires in public has decreased over the decades. Don't play with fires or anything that ignites a fire that could be a threat to the people around you, especially outside where trees are present, not just indoors. And that is it for today's episode. I hope you learned something And you do not do the same mistake as the band manager did by setting the pyrotechnics. I wish you all a safe and a nice day. See ya.